we're going to create the Unit 9 project. Create my package in here. Unit 9 dot Java. Let's see if that takes it or not. Sometimes it doesn't, because the word Java is in there. We'll see if it lets me or not. I'm going to create a class in here. Again, we're just going to call it arrays. Maybe just arrays and see what happens. Okay. All right, so we do with a two-dimensional array, 2D arrays. Again, it's really just an array of arrays. Okay. And again, they still have to follow the same rule as the single array. With the 1D array, they have to be the same data type. You cannot mix them also. If they're all integers, then all the arrays, whether how many layers deep, they have to be only integers. Okay. You can't mix them. So you can initialize arrays using the Java version, int of numbers. Right? So that's you just declare numbers of two-dimensional arrays has no size. You can't use it until you declare a size. Right? That's one way. Another way to declare array is you see something like that. Sometimes you see the brackets go right next to the numbers, like that. I mean, it's still fine. Okay, the space is not really it doesn't really matter. But I think if you put that in there, it will still work. Right? It's just harder to see, to read. You can put that in here like that, or you can put at the end of. We did that last time also. Int scores, you can do that too, and that works too. So you can do it any way you want. Again, I prefer the first method because it just makes more sense to me. If it makes more sense to use the middle one, then use that for the third one. Okay, so these are how you can create arrays with no size. Now if you want to use these numbers, usually again if you do that you will read the data first to get the size of the row and column. Okay, but usually when you create arrays, and I'm going to go and up here and modify this to say new int, like that, right? So when you initialize arrays, notice that if I leave it empty, it doesn't let me do it. Okay. If you mouse over this, it will say variable must provide either dimension expressions or an array initializer. Okay. So that means if you do it this way, you have to at least provide the first number, the row. You cannot leave that empty. So if you want to say an array of 3, okay, then 3 rows is fixed, but the column can be any size, right? So now we have what's called the jagged array. Okay. And if you want to have a 3 by 3, then you put that in there, and now it's fixed at 3 by 3, so it's a square matrix or it's a square array, right? 3 by 3. That is one way. The other one here is the, let's just say we have a 3 of unknown. This is called the jagged array because it could be unevenly sized. This is a square array or matrix. We call So once you declare that, then you can then go ahead and assign values to them. Right? So if you think of a table, it's a 3x3 table. This is the row, the column. And the third one here is scores. If you want to do this method, we actually initialize it right away, and that will determine the size of the array. Again, just remember it's an array of arrays. So in here, you have to put another array of arrays. So if I do that, you have 3 internal arrays. So those 3 arrays will represent the rows, right? And then inside each of those internal arrays, we have the columns. So if I put here all numbers, if I say 2, 3, and 5. So it's the first row has 3 columns. The second row might have like 6, 7, 8, 3 columns. The third row, if I have I have like 9, 10, 11. So that is a square. Right, it's a square array. It's a 3x3. And if this is hard to see, you can always put that into the next line and just kind of tab them over so you can see easily. So here it looks just like a table. It's a 3x3. Just like the first one, except the first one has no data. The second has a 3 by unknown. Okay. So since our scores are populated, if you want to access those elements, you can print them out by using the index for the row. So this will be row 0. This is row 1. This is row 2, right? Row 2. So the index of 0 for the row, and then index of 1 for this, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, and so on. So if you want to print these scores out, how would you do it? Okay, so when you print data out from a 2-dimensional array, you have to use a nested loop. Okay, otherwise, you cannot print them out. So you go by the row, one loop for the row, one loop for the column, so you can print them out. Okay. Yep. That's a question. It should be on Blackboard, and it should be that link I posted up there on the home page. No, under the home page. At the very top. So if you go to the very top, yeah. So at the very top, on the home page, this link right here. Okay. So you click that, and it'll ask you to join, and just put your name in there.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we're going to print the array. And to do that, we need to a nested loop. It can be both in any type of loop you want. While loop, for loop. Okay, do while loop. But usually we know the size already, so the most common one is the for loop. Right, so for int the row first. If you want to print row first, you can print column first. Doesn't matter how you do it. But just remember that the first index is always the row. So I could say int row, starting from 0, when row is less than the size. So how do we know the size? Now we're talking about 2 dimensions, right? So the length of that will still be scores.length. Okay, the property scores.length. This will give you the length of the row, the size of the row only. It does not give you the columns. So it will give me 3 because I have 3 rows, but you cannot get the columns from there. To get the columns, you have to specify the row number and then dot length. So for example, if I put here int length row, then I can say scores dot length will give me the row size. To get the column, that is tricky because of this jagged array here. Right? Sometimes you can have different size in columns, so you have to specify the number row. If it's a square, it's easy. You can pick any columns, any rows, and then get the size of that. So for example, if you say int len column, then I can say equals to the scores of 0. I can pick the first row and then just give it the length of that. And now it gives me the length of that column. It will also be 3 in this case because it's square. Okay. If it's not square, then you have to do every row and make sure you get the correct size, because if you don't do that, you might run into the out of bounds exception error, right? But in this case, it's a square, so that's fine. And now, since we declared the length row, you could put that here if you want. And then we'll just do the row increment here. So we got the outer row. So for every row, we start with the row 0 first, which is this one up here. So we're going to print the first column, which is 0. So to get that index, we need to do a second loop. And this will be the column, starting from the 0 column, the first column. So it follows the same syntax here, except we'll go scores of 0. If it says 0, in this case, it's fine. Again, we just pick one. If not, you could say score of the row dot length. Right? So in this way, it will work for every size. It doesn't matter how many columns there are, because every size, if you have coded this way, it'll work. If you pick 0, then that means it's a square. Okay, just make sure you do it correctly. And then the column will be just plus plus. And then finally, we can now print them out. So when we print, we'll do a sysout. To make it nice like a table, then you want to use the print, right? Now the print line, if you do that, it will just print a list of data. It doesn't help us. So when you say print, and we'll put the number of the first field, which is 2. So that will be of the 0, 0, right? Or row column. So basically, we just say scores of row column. And then we'll put a space plus a space. So use that nice space after that print. So we'll print the first row when row is 0. So it'll be 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, all the way to the end of that row. Once we're done, then we exit out the loop. So back out here, we'll move the print line to the next line. So to do that, we need to add a print line, an empty line, right? Otherwise, we just continue from there on, and we'll still have a long list of data. So we force a line break, and then we'll start the next row of data. And then now the row will be 1, and then we'll start over again. Now column is already set back to 0, so 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, and so on. Okay, so save this, and then if you run now, you should have that table printed just like the way we had laid out up there in line number 9, 10, 11. Okay. Again, that will work for any size. So for example, if I change just 6, 7 here, and if I added like 12 down here, okay, it should still work, right? So it works for any size arrays in this case. It's a jagged or regular. But if you don't put row in here, if you just say if you put 0 in here, it will fail because you have run out of index, out of bound, right? It tries to print the first row, it's fine. The second, 6, 7, it's fine. But once you get to the third, it's out of bound because now the fourth number here is out of bound. And here the index of 0 gives us only 3. Here I have 4, so therefore you have the problem. Okay? So just make sure you have put that in here, and that should solve the problem. Okay, so that's how you print data out from a two-dimensional array. Again, you want to print the example I have here. I'm printing like row-wise, right? You print row first, and then column. You could swap these two, and you print what you get actually a column-wise. You print the column first, and then the row a second. If I swap these two, you see it's different. Column and row. The format will still be the same, right? If you do that, let's see, it may not work. It probably crash. Yeah, it crashed. That's not how I want it. Okay, you keep this the same. I think what I meant was that if I put the column here first. Okay. If you swap the two, if you put the column first and then the row second, and then you say from row to column instead, then you get the other layout. So it'll print 2 and then 6, 9, and then 3, 7, 10, and so on. So it's a little bit different.